Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Anne Bennett. I'm the Executive Director of the Laurel Historical Society here in Laurel, Maryland. And we are celebrating women's history. We are celebrating the opening of our new exhibit. It's all Laurel, City Limits and Beyond. And we are joined with several panelists from the Anne Arundel County side of things here in Laurel. So we have Mary Gibson with us tonight. She's the church administrator for Mount Zion. And we also have Ms. Audrey Garnett, also a parishioner and community member from Bacontown. And joining us also is a parishioner and I guess a webmaster and media specialist, Mr. Brian Jenkins. So we're going to go through a short history, genealogy, culture, exploration of a wonderful small community kind of on the outskirts of Laurel proper over across town. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or Q&A. You're in for a fascinating look at local history. And thank you again for joining us tonight. And thank you all to our presenters and our panelists. So Ms. Mary, I will let you take it away from here.
Yes, first of all, I want to say good evening and thanks for this opportunity, and I thank Audrey for joining me so we can talk a little bit about the town that we were raised in, which is the town of Bacontown. According to what we have discovered is that Bacontown was the property of a slave owner by the name of Dorsey, and he had a slave and her name was Ma Bacon. And when he freed her, I believe it was around 1860, she was given property. And that is the property that Bacontown now sits on. And from that property, what I can gather is that we started a small church. My mom said in the beginning, the church was a log cabin. And then I think it's been destroyed like, what, 2 times? By fire. Yeah. By fire, like twice. And so what you see here on the screen is what Mount Zion United Methodist Church now looks like. Ma Bacon, according to what I have here, she was born in 1830 and died in 1913. She had 4 daughters, Mary Virginia, someone named Nanny, then it was Mary Elizabeth Henson, and then a daughter named Kitty. Across from the church sits the Henson House. And from what I can gather from other historical data, is that house was a slave-owned house. That was a house that Mary Elizabeth Henson lived in, Mom Bacon's daughter. And then my grandmother, Edna Stringfield, is a direct descendant of Mom Bacon. She was Elizabeth Henson's great-great-granddaughter. And she lived in that house until she moved to a nursing home. My mom, Elsie Matthews, who died in 2021, was raised by Edna, and her husband's name was Lonnie Stringfield. She was raised by them. So she also lived in that house, in that Henson house. And she would tell me stories of how she would look out the window and be able to look right straight across the road straight to the church. So the house and the church were very much connected. And then right now, unfortunately, the house is falling down, which is a shame. But, you know, I guess it is what it is. And next to the house, the church was also a school. And that school came from St. Jacob's Lodge number 28. Which was a Black lodge that consisted of people in the community. And that lodge also held a schoolhouse, grades 1 through 7. It's my understanding that my uncles and my aunts also went to that school. Now that lodge is still standing, as well as the graveyard that started back around Mom Bacon's time. Because if, according to what we've been told, if you look at the graveyard and you look to your right, the slaves are buried close to the racetrack border property. And so, and then the graveyard started from there and moved on over to where it is today. And we are still burying people in that graveyard, and the church upkeeps that graveyard. That graveyard, the graveyard and the lodge used to be separate from the church. But back in 2022, I believe, is when we went to and got it all put together. 21. Now we went to court. The church went to court and asked that the graveyard and the lodge be given to the church. And so we went to court. We had it's called a quick deed or something. And so now all the property is owned by Mount Zion United Methodist Church, which consists of about 7 acres. Elizabeth, Mary Elizabeth Henson, which is one of my Baker's daughters, her picture sits in my basement. My grandmother had it in her house, and when she passed away, I took that picture and I keep it in my basement. I think Audrey can speak more about the community itself, and I could probably speak more about the lodge. Don't you think?
I guess.
Yeah, sure. Take it. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Audrey Garnett, and I am a resident here of Bacontown. And the part of history that I'm talking about, in the early 40s, the county provided the land of what is the rest of Bacontown. In the early 40s, it was all divided into lots, and it sold for $100 a lot, $1, $1 down, and $1 a week. And most people brought 1 or 2 lots, but 1 lot was big enough to put your house on, and little land in the front, little land in the back. And there are not many original descendants here from the first purchase of land. A few people never, ever built anything on the property. And some, they started out with 1 and may have brought another one somewhere in the neighborhood. But it grew quickly. Not everybody built a house. A lot of people had trailers. And Bacontown had just as many trailers as it had homes built. We went without water until 1995. Once Anne Arundel Community Development came in to help clean up Bacontown, getting services for the people without having running water. Some had no electricity, but we all lived here as a community. And with their help, we were able to get the community cleaned up. We were able to improve homes. They did renovations, bringing all homes up to code, providing water and electricity. Our streets finally got paid from the tar and the chip that we had. It changed a lot. It's wonderful now, but we've seen a lot of people come and go, a lot of families. Mostly once the parents or grandparents passed away and left the home to the family, most of them were sold. There is not very few original families living on the lots that were purchased in the 40s. I don't know what else to tell you.
Okay.
Mary, I'm going to interrupt you just real quick. Is there a TV or radio on in the background? I'm getting a little interference.
Yes, there is.
I'm so sorry. Let me
Yes,
let me send you off to do that, and then Audrey will come back. I would love to hear more, about your earliest memories, even too, when the community, was first
Oh,
getting,
okay.
those houses were being built.
I'm sorry, I forgot all about the radio.
Did it hit that? Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for that. I didn't mean to derail you, but
No,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, Ms. Garnett, please, yeah,
Okay.
continue talking about, especially the building of the houses. Thank you.
Okay, I moved here in 1953. I was only 5 years old, and we thought this was the greatest place you ever seen. We would catch everything we could and put it in a cage. We had our own zoo, chickens, pigs.
Yeah.
It was a community. People even did a lot of their own gardening, or we had a hog farmer, a couple of them.
Yep.
And it was just amazing. We had fruit trees throughout the community. Oh, that was just fantastic. You could just run to the apple tree. Somebody would come by and tell you, oh, the peaches are ready. The plum tree is ready. The pears are ready. In the summertime, you never had to go home to eat. You just find out what was right, and that's where you were. Or you know how your mother would make you an apple pie, blackberry pie, peach cobbler. It was, you could just go outdoors and play all day. It was fantastic. Let me say, I came from Washington, D.C. So, we were around cement, firings going off, the fire truck things country people are not used to.
Yep, and we were country.
And here you could play in the road when we first came. Okay.
Right, yep.
When we first came,
Yep.
because there was barely a car to come by.
That's
during the day. So we just played kickball, roller skate, whatever in the street. But it was just so nice. Your mother would say, go out there and get me so-and-so chicken. And you're like, oh, no, not that one, Mom. That's my favorite. So anyway, we love pets. And over the years, all of that disappeared.
Yep.
No more chickens, no hogs, no nothing.
No.
Not a lot of traffic from the racetrack.
No. Everything changed.
Everything changed. It's just a community now.
Yeah, it's just I don't think the closeness that I know for a fact the closeness that we had
That you
as
had.
children in the community of Bacontown, that is no longer there. I mean, we could go from house to house and felt safe.
Yeah.
Now we don't even know who lives in Bacontown. There's only a very, very few people who are still in Bacontown. I myself came from Bacontown, so I didn't come from any place else. I was all with my mom was from Bacontown, so therefore I was from Bacontown. My father, though, was from Laurel Grove, so that's where he came from. So, and we did not live on the street of Bacontown. We lived back in the woods. So therefore we had a home back there. We had no running water. We had no electricity. But, sometimes you don't know when you're poor, and we were really poor. But I guess because we had so much fun, we had so much love, we didn't think about it. And so as I got older and got on my own, then I realized how poor we really were. But it was just wonderful. And in the Henson House, where my grandmother lived across from the church, I used to go there and with her, and she would be baking the lemon meringue pie because she was known for it. She was the only house in the beginning that had a phone. So everybody in Bacontown came to Edna Stringfield's house to make a phone call or even to get a phone call. And her house, that Henson House, was really small. It only had like a very small kitchen, dining room, living room, and then you had to go upstairs and you had 3 bedrooms, believe it or not, but it was so tiny. And she had no running water, but they did have electricity. And it was a very, very well kept home. And my grandmother was very proud of that house that came down from her great-great-grandmother. it was just such a wonderful, wonderful Afro-American community. We were all into ourselves. It was like we were in Anne Arundel County, but we were forgotten. Because we were on the side that connected to PG County, we were the forgotten community. I mean, we didn't get anything on that end until Audrey, just like Audrey said, then when it came along, and then they discovered Russet started coming. And then when Russet came, then they said, oh, what is this community? Why is this here? Oh, we got to fix this place up, because we can't have this beautiful community standing next to this place is just kind of falling apart. And so that's when Bacontown started to get what we deserved. And then under Reverend R. David Hall is when the new homes, that's when Bacontown really changed. He got with the county, and they brought homes in to the county, and people started living in the homes. And there were people not in Bacontown. At first, the homes were given to Bacontown residents, right, Audrey?
Yes.
If you passed the financial test, and you had to go through all this. And so some of the Bacontown people did get the homes, but not very many. And then some of them also lost their homes once they got them. But then after that, then other people started moving in. And we don't, the community, the sense of community was lost. Now, Mount Zion has always been there for like community forever. So if you went to Mount Zion and you were part of the community, I mean, I live in Howard County, so I go to Bacontown. I mean, I go to Mount Zion Church. That is my home church, but I don't live in Bacontown. So a lot of people that come to the church now do not live in the community. They come from like outside of the community. So, but the church has always been a beacon for that community. Mount Zion has always been the beacon that stood there to pull that community together. So, because they would go there for me as children, we would have dances over at the lodge. So that was a place of community for us. And then, of course, the graveyard was a big thing too. A lot of our family members are buried back there. In the beginning, when my mom used to handle it, the graves were $300 a piece. I have a book dated all the way back to the 70s where people was paying for the graves. So now they're like $4,000. But anyway, back then they were like $300. So that was another sense of community, that graveyard, because a lot of family members was there. Don't you? Yeah, that's what I would think. Yeah. Questions?
Well, yeah, I think, thank you so much, ladies, for setting such a wonderful, tone for our talk. And we're going to see some of the pictures about some of the places you mentioned a little bit later, especially the lodge. We'll talk about the cemetery a little more. But I was hoping that you could, set us off historically. So going back a couple generations before we talk about the community again, and tell us what you know about this remarkable woman we're looking at here on the screen.
Well, okay. We knew about Ma Bacon. We did not know a lot about her. At least I'm going to speak for me. I did not know a lot about her until the Dorsey family, which is the white slave owners family, started tracing a picture of this woman that they found sitting on their porch, and they didn't know who she was. And so they started doing some history, and they found out who she was and that she was connected to Bacontown. So that family came to our church one Sunday, and they bought this picture that you see here of Mom Bacon, and they began to tell us a little bit of the history as far as they knew it about Mom Bacon. And they talked about that, she had these children. They didn't know what happened. They didn't know, they knew she was free. They knew that her father was one of the Dorseys, was the landowner. Mom Bacon's father, according to her death certificate, he was her father, and then a slave lady was her mom. And then when he freed her, then he gave her some property. So property was given to her, and that property is what the town is built upon. And I also know by doing some stuff that was given to me, some history stuff, that Edna Stringfield's great-great-grandmother was Mary Elizabeth Henson, who was Ma Bacon's daughter. And also Miss Joan Clark. If looking at the history, Ma Bacon, I believe it says she was married twice. So she married I believe she married a Williams and she married a Henson. So here we go. According to the treaty that I have, she married, no, I'm wrong. She married someone called Samuel Bacon. So she died it says here 1913. So she married someone named Samuel Bacon. And then she had these 4 daughters. And one of these daughters is Mary Elizabeth Henson, who I'm more familiar with because that was Edna Stringfield, my grandmother. That was her great-great-grandmother. And so Mrs. Elizabeth was married twice. She married a Williams and she married a Henson. Now, I believe the understanding that I get that Miss Joan Clark, who's still alive, that she belonged to the Henson side. So I was talking to Brian, and I think we need to try to tape her to see exactly what she remembers, because she's getting dementia. But and so when you look at this breakdown, when I look at Elizabeth Henson, and then she was married twice, once to a Williams and once to a Henson, and then when I follow it, and then I see the children, and then I can go all the way down to my grandmother, Edna Cooper, who was my grandma. So that's how I know she's connected. And then I also, Audrey, is looking at this, the Williams that live across from the church, yes. They are also connected to Mom Bacon. Yes, because down here is Edna Mae and Sadie and all of them. So they also, that's another family that's located in Bacontown right now that's also direct descendants of Ma Bacon. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm going to advance the slide just real quick because you had, you had mentioned, Mariah Bacon's death in 1913. So I believe one of our researchers found this, and we were kind of shared this, and I just want to take a minute to just kind of look at it. So we're looking at her death certificate in 1913, and this is such a wonderful source of information, both for the community as well as Laurel. So. What's really interesting, if you start up at the top, it says village or city, and it says near Laurel. So already we're kind of, setting the boundaries. And then we can see, like you said, she was born in Maryland. And what I think, and Mary, we shared this the other day, was so extraordinary is that they put the name of her father, which was probably her owner at the point.
Yes, I think he was. Yes, he was. Yes.
And then you said her mother most likely was another enslaved individual with the Dorseys. It looks like a Hebby, maybe Smith.
I make out the Smith, but I could not make out that first name.
I'm not sure either. But it looks like that. She was just basically died of old age, essentially. It says, to put it nicely, senile decay was, I guess, she was advancing in years as well as in memory. And then down in the lower right hand corner, we get additional information about the community and about Laurel as well. So Fisher and Fair are known undertakers.
Yes.
So they were they took care of the arrangements for that. What I think 2 poignant points of data, but also very poignant, is that she was buried on Christmas Day. She had passed away just a few days prior to Christmas 1950. And then it says place of burial or removal. It looks like home site in AA County, so Anne Arundel County. So it looks like she was buried there.
So if they're saying home site, I wonder where that is.
So that could maybe be at the house itself, but the cemetery, at least was established around that time. So
that's what I wonder if she's in that over there in that area where they say the slaves were buried. Wow, I didn't pay any attention to that, but I wonder if that's where she is. behind the church, and that's why maybe maybe that property was
Right,
there.
and that's the oldest, oldest section of the cemetery as well.
Mhm.
So again, this is just real fascinating just to kind of see so much historical
Yes.
information captured here. Excuse me, what's also really interesting is, we actually have an exact date of birth, April 1st, 1830. So, so like we said, she was, fairly advanced in age for the time. And
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
Yep. And then I was also fascinated with the fact that it says the person who filled this out, or the person who gave this information, was Mary Elizabeth Henson, which was her daughter.
Her daughter,
Yes.
exactly.
Which was grandma's great grandma. Yeah, I saw that, and that kind of was like, wow, that's cool. Yeah. Okay.
Yep, and then the other documents. I'm sorry. I think the document's next, but I'm going to let you introduce this young woman as well. So, Mary, who are we looking at here?
You're looking at Mary Elizabeth Henson, who's my great great grandma's that's my my grandmother's great great grandmother, and she's also the daughter of Ma Bacon. Yes, and it's in my basement.
Yes,
I'm so proud of this.
Mary was kind enough to bring it to Mount Zion a couple weeks ago, so I could photograph. I did my best to photograph it in the frame there. But it was so striking. I mean, not only the beautiful face and the hair and the blouse she's wearing, but also the fact that it's a very, very stylized photograph, or either it's a painting or like a sketch of it, and when you get up close to that, you can really kind of capture that sense. That was a treat to see that.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that amount. Yeah, that's good.
So it's wonderful that we have photograph of Ma Bacon, and then we have a photograph of one of her daughters, and we're going to have some picture and a few other slides of other descendants here, but we had a comment in the chat too, and we'll come back to that at the very end. But this is part of the Anne Arundel County archives where the manumissions were recorded. So when enslaved individuals, were free or set free with stipulations, and so you can see that it names Mariah specifically at the very beginning, and also lists that she had 4 children, all daughters. So it looks like maybe, I'm not sure, Jerry. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the first name is. It looks like
according to the records, that should have been I'm looking at her name was Mary Virginia, but her nickname was Jerry.
Okay, so then that's perfect. Okay, good. I was again, I'm not great with the handwriting, but that's perfect.
Yes.
And then we see Mary Elizabeth listed, and looks like Kitty as well. And then I'm gonna get the name wrong again, but is it Aixa Dorsey? And it was signed in 1860. There were a couple things that I'm interested to point out, and Mary and Audrey, please feel free to chime in here as well. But again, what's heartbreaking about this is, even though there's manumission, that it states that Mariah will be free as the writing of this manumission, but that her daughters have to stay in bondage until they come of a certain age, which is heartbreaking, because some of them are very, very young. The witnesses also, what stood out to me in light of the fact that we just looked at the death certificates, is Noah Dorsey is listed as a witness, which is Mariah's father, according to
yes, that's right. Yep. That's interesting. Wow. Good stuff.
Yeah, so again, it's like this coming together of archives and bringing all these stories out, and then when you layer on top the living knowledge that you ladies have, and then the architecture, the the beacon, like you said, from the church, and then the living memory, and then the photographs, the pictures. We're painting such a portrait of all of these women here to celebrate their lives in Bacontown. And yeah, I kind of put this as a segue out from the archival information, but I thought this might be a good place to talk a little bit about the lodge and the building of the actual church. So it looks like, again, right around the same time that Ma Bacon was nearing her life. We know she passed away in December of 1913. We have the cornerstone here documented with the church.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. Ain't that something? And that's the pastor, or Reverend Hughes.
Yeah, Mr. Freddie could tell you about him.
Yeah, Mr. Freddie could. Yeah. Yeah. So, Anne, did you want us to say something?
Yeah, you can say something now. I think I have other pictures, including the banner that you showed me for the lodge. So we can talk about that in the next couple of slides. But you had mentioned the Reverend at the time, Reverend Hughes. Is that a name that's familiar to the community? So is probably.
I am not familiar with that name at all. I mean, I've seen it up there, but I don't know who he is. And I would think because when the churches first started, they were on remember it was St. Mark's, Queen's Chapel, and Laurel. We were on a charge when it first got started. It was a charge church, was it not?
Was it church every Sunday back then, or every other week?
Or something like that. When up the pastor, when up the pastor showed up. So you didn't have church. You might have had church every Sunday, but I don't think you had a pastor every Sunday. And so when the church started, Mom said it was a log cabin, and you can still see where the intent is, or the potbelly stove. Mama said that's where the potbelly stove was located. It's bricked in now, but you can tell where it used to be. And so that's how I started out as a log cabin. Mom said in the beginning. That's what she told me.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Laurel charge. We have a little bit of information we were able to research, and we have that on display in our current exhibit. But you're right, it was essentially uniting the Methodist churches kind of in the area again, Laurel. So Prince George's County side, close to the museum, with St. Mark's there. You guys are not too far away, but then fairly far south is Queen's Chapel there.
Yes, that's right. And so we started as a charge. It says here in 1895, Mount Zion became a part of the Laurel charge.
Okay.
And that's when we joined that charge. Now, before then, according to some history I got here, it says originally the church was called Bacon Chapel, and then Bacon Chapel. So it started off with Bacon Chapel. I'm assuming that's what Mom meant by the log cabin. I mean the log place. I mean the building was a log cabin kind of things. And then in 95 we then joined the law charge, and then we became part of that whole three church circuit, the three Afro-American churches.
And then I think we're gonna
that's Henson House.
Quick detour. We'll come back to the lodge in just a minute. But Mary, I know we have a couple pictures here. So this was the little house you mentioned in the beginning of the talk, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the Henson House. That's the house that my mom grew up in. The window that you see at the top faces the street. That was my mother's bedroom. My grandparents lived there, Edna and Lonnie Stringfield. And believe it or not, in that house, you have a living room, a dining room, a kitchen, and 3 bedrooms.
You're right, it is
all there.
And a porch. Don't forget the porch. Yeah. And my grandfather was over 6 feet tall. So if you look towards the back, you see how the house kind of slants down. So he could never stand up in his own bedroom. He was always bent over. My grandmother was short, so she was fine. Remember that? So yeah, that's the Henson House. That was the house that my mom was raised in. Yeah. And that's the house
And
now falling apart.
exactly. And I was going to say, unfortunately,
So sad. So
again,
sad.
we're talking
Yeah, that's
about
it right there. Yeah. Look at that.
Whiskey Bottom Road, and
Yeah.
Brockbridge, kind of in that back
Okay.
area by the corner of the track. So if you do, like you said, cut over through to Russett's, the back way, this is what the property looks like today.
Yes.
So it is.
Yeah. So sad. So sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is what it is.
And then we go back to the lodge. So this is another historical picture of the lodge building that still stands. We saw that earlier from the inside and out. This is a larger picture of the date stone and the lodge's banner. And we had a question come through, and I'll ask this now so we don't wait to the end. What does the BS&D of A?
Oh, okay. I have that. That stands for Benevolent Sons and Daughters of Abraham of the United States of America.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So that was like what you mentioned earlier, that was another benevolent society similar to what was at like associated with Queen's Chapel, like Abraham.
Yes, yes. And it was also one in Jessup. As by Asbury, there was a lodge, but theirs is falling down. Yeah, and the one in Queen's Chapel, the Historical Society took that over, and that is really, really nice. They made a whole museum out of that down in Queen's Chapel in Beltsville. Yes.
And Mary, you were telling me some stories about some early memories of the lodge and how your mother was involved with it. So.
Yeah, I remember the lodge because I was a member of the lodge when I was very young, as was my grandparents and my mom, and a lot of the people in the community belonged to the lodge. It was a place that we go to. We had our meetings, we paid dues, we were in charge of the graveyard, and also because it was right next to the church also used it as children. We'd go there and we'd have dances and stuff of that sort. And in the beginning, though, the lodge had stood, and then it was turned into a schoolhouse for the community. So in that building was grades 1 through 7, and that's where the kids in Bacontown went to elementary school. And if you wanted to go further, you would have to go to Lakeland, which is in College Park. So you'd have to, Audrey told me this. Yeah, on your own, you'd have to walk to Route 1, catch the bus down to College Park to go to school, high school. But grades 1 through 7 is there. My uncles and my aunts, they all attended that. On the first floor, I believe Mom said was the lower grades, and then on the top floor was the older kids. Back in the day when I was younger, I remember the blackboard being in there, and remember they had benches in there where the kids would sit. So it was a lot more in there than it is now. Right now, the church, as I say, own it, so it's now used as storage, but it's still in pretty good condition. And we use it, and it's just a part of who we are. It's part of our history. And so as far as we know, it will never go away. The lodge disbanded years ago because people stopped being a part of it. So that disbanded. Mom was the last president of the lodge, and so one of her dreams was that at one point the lodge and the graveyard would then become a part of Mount Zion United Methodist Church, that we would own it. We were keeping it up. The church kept up the graveyard. It also kept up the lodge. So like I said, so eventually in June of 2022, the lodge and the graveyard then became a part of a Mount Zion United Methodist Church. So now we own all that. We used to pay dues. We go in the lodge. If you were a member, you had to pay dues. If you were a member, if you died, you automatically got a grave. You didn't have to pay for it. That was one of the benefits of the lodge. The only benefit, that you get a grave. And they took minutes. It was just like a regular meeting. Yeah. And they were very proud of that lodge. Very proud of it. Very proud of that organization. Yes, they were.
We even had night school in the lodge.
I remember
under Mr. Hebron. who used to be our principal when we were children
Mhm.
at Harmon's Elementary. And he would come out and help with the classes. And I don't know how many people ended up getting a GED through the program.
Oh, Lord, I forgot about
But
that.
it was fun.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Well,
And that was in the
dang.
70s.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
girl, I forgot that.
Yeah. Miss Audrey,
Okay.
where was the elementary school you mentioned?
In the Lodge.
No, those.
No,
No, the elementary school.
That was in St. Jacob's Lodge that they used for an elementary school.
Okay.
And in the 70s is when it was used for night school.
Night school. Okay.
To encourage people to get a GED. Yeah.
Wonderful.
But we do have 2 living community members that actually went to elementary school there in the Lodge. And the man looking.
Did they go there? I didn't know they went there.
Yeah.
So they both did attend.
Mm-hmm.
They went to school in the Lodge before they went to
before they
Harmon's.
went to Harmon's. Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that.
I was gonna say we're gonna have some more stories to collect. So there we go.
I know the women she's talking about. I know exactly what
Yeah.
she's talking about. But I did not realize that. Wow.
Okay. So kind of talking about the cemetery, you had mentioned it in the beginning and just now, Mary, just again about the wish that now Mount Zion has that united
Mhm,
vision for
mhm.
all of that land, the lodge,
Mhm,
the cemetery, the church is now part of your property.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. We now own the graveyard. We've been keeping it up for years. So we have a graveyard committee, and we're in the process. We don't really know a lot of people that's buried back there. We've never done a mapping. So we're hoping to get some help from maybe a county or someone to give us some help so that we can actually do the mapping as far as we can. Now,
as much as you
can, because one of the graves that's on the corner over on the edge by the racetrack, where the slaves are, they were stones. So those stones over years have been moved. So we don't know who they are or where they are. We can only pretty much say where we have stones that we can, and then family members come every Memorial Day, and a lot of family members know where their people are. And so we're going to try to tap into them and try to help us do a little bit of more mapping of graves that have no stones.
Yeah, I know there's some people in our audience tonight that I think would be very interested in helping with that project. So we'll make sure that we can move forward with that.
Please do.
And this is just a bigger picture of just a portion of the cemetery too. Again, there's so much history and so much more potential stories to find out and document. But I want to move on because I want you to finally tell the story. You've mentioned them quite a few times, and you can kind of see the 6 foot tall and the not quite as 6 foot tall. But who are these people for our audience, Mary?
Those are my grandparents, Edna and Lonnie Stringfield. Yes. Now, what we need to understand is that they raised my mom. All right, because my mom's parents had died. They were my mom's godparents. So my mom went to live with them when she was about 5 or 6. So those are the only grandparents that I know. So, and that was her mom and dad. So yes, that's Lonnie and Edna Stringfield. Yes. Beautiful people, just wonderful people, wonderful people. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and we're very fortunate because this photograph comes from our Laurel Leader collection. I guess it was,
yes, because they did an article on that.
They sure photographer. And I got a big kick out of the back because the caption on the back of the photograph says Mayor of Bacontown.
That would be Lonnie Stringfield. Yes, you are correct. He was lovely. Yes, that's what they used to call her. Yes, very well respected.
Always working at the church.
Yes, big church workers. Yes,
But I want to move on. I think we have one or two more pictures left, and then we'll turn our attention to the questions. But please tell us where and what this photograph is.
Okay, I'm thinking it's around the 20s. And in this photograph, I have uncles. Mr. Freddie Morgan is in here too. So I have uncles in here. I got like 3 uncles in here. We want to say, I think that's cousin Emma. So I have family members that and this is in front of the school. They were going to the lodge and school. I'm thinking, guessing their ages and when they were born. This has got to be in the 20s.
I have not a clue.
Yeah, I know that's G-Man. I could tell you that right now.
How about that?
That's G-Man. I know that's Uncle Marcellus. That's Uncle Leroy. That's Uncle Milton.
I thought this one was Shoe.
Yeah, it was. I think that's him. Yeah. So, and then that's Uncle Milton. That's Mr. Freddie.
Is this Miss Leanna?
You know what? It most certainly is. I never knew who she was yet. So these are people that we know
In the community.
in the community. This is people that actually live there.
Yes.
And wow. Yes.
Yeah, we'll have to. I'll sit down with the pencil between.
Yeah,
these
we're gonna have to.
names
Yeah,
and
I didn't realize that's
make
I
sure we
didn't
get
realize
names captured.
Yeah, me and Audrey are gonna have to set with you because I didn't realize that was Miss Leanna. But now I'm looking at it, I can see it now. I can see that's her. That's Mr. Freddie's sister. Yeah, I can see that. Okay. All right.
And then I think so again, you had kind of started the talk tonight by talking about the contemporary community, but I just wanted to bring our last slide around. Just to again give a shout out to the Washington Post from a few years ago, doing a piece on the history of the time. So you can see several of the different images, the church from a different angle, and then the Henson House that we saw from different views. So do you have any memory of the photographers in the article coming out, Ms. Audrey?
Audrey?
Yes, because we got ran away. We got ran away from taking pictures on the property. But in that picture, I had been camping for the weekend. And I stopped in Virginia and we brought a newspaper. And what was on the front page but Bacontown, we just couldn't wait to get home. We're like, what's going on? But I do remember that picture. It was taken on Women's Day.
Yes.
At Mount Zion.
Yep.
That's why you see them all strolling in red.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh
well, that is my last slide. So if you don't mind, I am going to just stop my screen here. I'm going to make a few more announcements and then we have a lot of questions. So I know we're kind of coming up at the end of our time here, but everyone's really excited to hear more history. So let me just change my slide just real quick. And then I'm going to come back to share that. Okay, so I'm going to go through the chat and the questions in just a few minutes, but if you do have additional comments or questions, please put it into the chat now. I just want to remind everyone that, like we said, next month there is going to be another edition of our spring speaker series, but we're still solidifying the speaker. He's doing a lot of additional research out of the area. So we're trying to nail it down if we're going to talk about dinosaurs or archaeology next month. We are proud to announce the annual meeting for the Laurel Historical Society. That's going to be on May 4th at the pool room just across the street from the museum. So it's our annual meeting open to the public, all of our members. We're very excited to announce the end of our strategic planning process and to do an after hours tour of the museum. So everyone in attendance tonight is certainly welcome to join us for that as well. We also have our gala coming up. So this is our biggest fundraiser of the year. And it's very exciting to announce that it's returning after a 3-year hiatus. So I hope you will be able to join us in support of the Historical Society on June 4th. Just as a quick plug, this is part of our commemorative collectible ornaments that we have featuring this year's exhibit logo. So we do have that available in our shop and online. And then finally, I just wanted to announce that I will be doing a follow-up email. So we are recording this, so I'll send a link out to the recording information about Mount Zion and the Historical Society as well. But if you want to contact me in the meantime, please feel free to visit our website, send me an email, or give us a call. So I am going to stop my screen right now, and then are we ready for the Q&A session now? All right, I'm gonna start with the question and answer box first. So as you mentioned earlier, again, there's an overlap of the African churches, or the Methodist churches serving the African American community kind of in the greater Laurel area. But we know that we're not sure, again, the overmix of the families and where some of the families were buried. So one of the questions is, were any parishioners that you know of from St. Mark's or even Queen's Chapel buried at the Mount Zion Cemetery?
Could be, I would say so.
I would say, because St. Mark's doesn't have a cemetery. So I would say definitely St. Mark's, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. And I know there's some parishioners from St. Mark's joining us tonight. So if you do have comments or questions about that, feel free to
please, to
let us know either tonight or as a follow-up. But right, St. Mark's is kind of more of a city church. If you think about it, you said you were very much very rural, but St. Mark's is really in the heart of Laurel. And we have another question saying, asking you to kind of think about Ma Bacon and the early residents, to see the barriers to their life and their existence during the Reconstruction after the Civil War. And they say, how do you think Ma Bacon and the early residents managed to build and grow despite so many barriers? Do you think you do have any information maybe about their personal traits or their practices or their resiliency, anything that was passed down to the family?
I don't. I have no idea. Audrey, do you?
The railroad was one of the biggest sources of income, where most of a lot of the men worked. Women did what they call days work. They worked for different families. The racetrack, most of the young people were on the racetrack. Then there was people that work on road construction, blacktop and whatever they do out there. But mostly, if you weren't a lady going out doing days work, you were a homemaker.
That makes sense, because I remember my grandmother, and I can't remember the name of the family, but she worked for a family. It was a doctor on Main Street. And wait a minute. She worked for a family called the Fairs.
Yeah, the Fairs, again, we saw them as they were part of the undertaking.
Yeah, I believe that my grandmother worked for them. Edna Stringfield. Okay,
yeah, in Laurel, that's
Awesome. Now, as far as going back to Mom Bacon and her children and all that, I've heard no stories about that that I'm aware of.
And let me go through the questions. So we have a researcher in our audience tonight, and she said that Ma Bacon was left a lot with a house on it by Asa Dorsey in her will dated 1880. Wow. And so that was, we know, probably 20 years or so after the manumission. So it seems like there's a documentation of the community starting at that time then.
Okay.
And then a similar a follow-up question. Do you have any information about who paid for the graves in the cemetery? You had mentioned the prices.
Oh, no. What happened was the graveyard belonged to the lodge.
Okay.
So the lodge set the price. The books that my mom kept goes back to the 70s. So in the 70s, I know the graves were like 300. And then she
Okay.
also had recorded if a baby was buried there, that was $75. So those books, that book I have going, and that's as far back as that book went. So I think that's as far back as in the 70s. Mama would have been 70s, I would have been 20. So mom would have been 50. So and now going back past that, with the lodge themselves, you know, going back maybe when I was younger, I don't know the price. I don't know what they were charging. I can only tell you about the 300. That was going rate for years. For years.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to be buried in Mount Zion because it was only $300 to get a grave.
Yeah.
Right. And you said that was in the 1970s, and then you said and now today it's, what did you say, it was up to like a couple thousand?
If you're a member of Mount Zion, it's $2,000.
Okay.
If you're a non-member, it's $4,000. Okay, that's big jumping.
That is. Just put a plug in for the church there. So, and then we had a question in the chat, and it looks like it was answered by another person in the chat. Where was the plantation located where Ma Bacon was freed?
I would say, I believe it was up in Anne Arundel County, up there.
Yeah, I think it indicated that it was close to Annapolis Junction, so I think that's still
up in that
Anne Arundel
area.
County.
Up in Anne Arundel County. Yes, that's where the family came from. Yes.
Yep. And then we also have a comment that Sandra Johnson from St. Mark's, she said that she believes there was also an Abraham Lodge in the Laurel Grove. You know, so the downtown, you know, kind of the historical side.
It is or it was.
It was. I would like to. I don't know if it's still there. The only buildings I'm aware of standing is the one in Jessup, which is falling down, and then the one in at Queen's Chapel. I would like to know where the one is in Laurel Grove, because I'm not sure where that is, or if it's still standing. It probably was one there, because the three churches, it was all connected. I'm sure they had one. I'm sure of that. Yes.
Great. We also have a question, again, you know, kind of going into your living personal experience now. You had talked early about the early days of Bacontown starting out as a community. Did you personally or the other residents of Bacontown, did you suffer discrimination from in the 50s, 70s, even being a rural community?
Yeah, I remember, or do you remember this? When the Ku Klux Klan came through our community and they wrote KKK on their church doors. I remember that. Yes.
Or burned churches
and burned church
yards.
Yeah, and stuff like that. Didn't they burn something in the churchyard too, Audrey?
Burned a cross.
Yeah, they burned a cross in the churchyard. Yes. I remember that. Yes, we were very afraid. We were young. But we were very afraid. They came through during the night. Yeah. Then my sister tells the story, my mom told the story too, that the next night, the people in the community, because we had no street lights. So the people in the community were sitting along Whiskey Bottom Road on their porches with shotguns, waiting for them to come back. But of course they didn't. And I remember personally myself walking down Whiskey Bottom Road when there was no developments like it is now, and the trees kind of went over top of the road. And I remember one night walking down towards the starting gate. I was a teenager, and I remember a car of white men, because I was in a really dark area at the end, hadn't quite got to, and they started yelling at me, and I remember taking off through the woods. Yes, I did. Wow. Yes, I'll never forget that. Yes. So yes, we did. Yeah.
Well, thank you, for those memories that, as painful and
Yeah.
as terrible as they are, but thank you, because that's, part of the story that needs to be told. And,
Yes.
we can see where it started and how it
Mhm.
developed and now, to the community that it is today.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and Richard put a comment in the chat as well, and thank you for this, for sharing these long overdue stories with us. And we have quite a few comments about, the wonderful and important presentation. And then Sandra Johnson, thank you. You just jumped back in. She said that their Abraham Lodge is no longer there at St. Mark's. It was located on 8th Street as well.
Okay, got you covered. Okay, I understand. That makes sense. Yes.
So I think that is the end. If I skipped over any questions, I apologize. But I think we're kind of at the end of our session tonight. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to stop the recording and then that'll get it starting to process, but I'll stay on for a few minutes with our presenters tonight if there's any other questions. So again, thank you so much for your stories and for your time tonight and just for sharing all these wonderful memories with us and educating us about this wonderful history in Laurel.
Yes, they're memories. Oh, Lord.